All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Why PreSpray fails? You know, a lot of people automatically blame the PreSpray when stubborn, filthy traffic patterns don't come clean. And sometimes that is the case. You know, maybe they didn't dilute it correctly. Maybe there's some problem with their equipment. Maybe there's other factors going on, and I'm going to break them down for you real good here. And I'm going to hopefully be able to save this video, and I'll put it on YouTube. And when somebody says my PreSpray failed, I can go ahead and maybe help them. Just push this video over to them, say, hey, look, watch this video, find out why your PreSpray failed, why this dirty, stubborn traffic pattern didn't come clean. Because we all know, you get inside of a house, you get the cleaning, the whole carpets are turning out beautiful. But in front of a sofa, coming out of a kitchen, the transition areas coming out of bathrooms and stuff like that in a hall, or just a den that's really bad. Next thing you know, what do you have? You got these areas that don't come clean where the rest of the carpets look good. Now, it could be wear and tear. And it's your job as the professional to go ahead and what I call micro test. Keep that in mind as we talk along here. Think about micro testing. Micro testing is doing a little small area and see if you can get a little clean spot. If you can get a clean spot, then you know it's not the carpet. It's what? Okay? You know that it's not wear and tear. And so you can't blame it on wear and tear. So you want to set those expectations. Maybe before you even set the expectations, maybe take the time and go ahead and do a little micro test first when you walk through or right after you walk through. Maybe right after your walkthrough, kind of mention, you know, some traffic patterns might come clean, might not be some wear and tear. Then you go over there and do that little micro test. Maybe mix up a little bit of concentrated PreSpray. Maybe take your PreSpray jug, take the top of it off, and go ahead and just kind of dip it over a little bit to a terry cloth towel and blot, and maybe just kind of gently rub an area right there and see if it comes clean. Then you'll have something even, you know, you'll have some type of little area as a marker or some test area where you can determine how clean you can get it, and you want the rest of it to match. And generally you can do that, no problem. But let's break down, you know, the problem. First of all, when somebody says, hey, look, I couldn't get a carpet cleaner, first thing I ask them is, what machine are you using? Are you using a portable or are you using a truck mount? And you might wonder, well, and the portable guys get all upset. That's a good point, Nate. We'll get to that. Portable guys get upset. Well, you're just picking on my porty. No, I'm not picking on your porty. You're going to have to step it up in the cleaning pie somewhere else, and somewhere else in the cleaning pie might have failed. For instance, portables are notorious for losing vacuum to foam, right? They foam up quite a bit, and those motors in there, the little electric motors, they're very susceptible to foaming. And so when they get foamed up on you, what happens? You end up losing vacuum. You lose vacuum, you're not extracting soil as well. So that could be part of the problem. If you got a truck mount, is your heat working? Are your belts tight? You know, there's all kinds of little variables that could be happening. So I just want to know what machine you're using first of all. All right. Number two, and probably one of the most important things, what type of fiber are you dealing with? If you're dealing with a nylon, hey, nylons will come clean with just about anything. You generally don't have to boost or anything or change your chemistry much. But we all know the dreaded polyesters, polypropylenes, and olefins are different animals. Why is that? Because they have an affinity for oil. Oil has a tendency to oxidize into the fiber, and it gets stuck inside there. Okay, so you really need good chemistry, you need good agitation, and different things. But your PreSpray can be affected by other factors, and that's really important. So if you can get your temperatures up, temperature does help. It does help break loose oils. There's no doubt about it. But if you don't have temperature, if you can't work with temperature, then you have to make it up. Well, like Nolan says here, somewhere in the tact, somewhere in the cleaning pie, you're going to have to make it up. If you don't have temperature, you're going to need some agitation. You're going to need better chemical. You know, you're just going to have to work, or you're going to need some more time for dwell time. So somewhere in the pie, you're going to have to make up for it or find out what's going on. Now, here's a really important factor a lot of people don't think about, and that's your rinse. A lot of guys have the rinse turned up, their acid rinse, right? They grab their hydroforce, they walk inside the house, they still got their acid rinse on, they got it cranked up, and they start pre-spraying. Well, what happens? Now, I know there's people in the industry who say, well, you know, that doesn't affect your pre-spray. Wrong. What does acid do anyway? Acid, you're putting acid on the carpet to drop the pH, so you can leave the carpets a little softer. You can go ahead and neutralize with a higher pH. So if you're neutralizing your pre-spray, it's not going to be as effective on those filthy transitions, okay? And you're going to think your pre-spray failed. But really what happened was It was your rinse that caused it. So we keep 2 rinse jugs. Instead of running a 5-gallon mixed tank, which a lot of guys run, we'll run 2 2.5-gallon tanks. And in one of them we'll have an acid rinse, and in the other one we'll have an alkaline rinse. Anywhere from neutral all the way up to 10 pH. Doesn't bother me, because the majority of soils in the carpet are what? They're acidic, right? So it's going to start dropping the pH anyway, and a lot of our rinses, if not all of them, are self-neutralizing. Okay, so here you are. Now here's one more thing to think about too. Suppose you take your hose out of your mixed tank of your acid rinse and you move it over to your alkaline rinse. Okay, maybe you're running this alkaline rinse here, which is really good for a powder. If you want a powder, you know, the RSFS Rob Secret Formula Alkaline, it's a fantastic product. Smells great. It cuts through the dirt really good. And what that does is it gives you a 1-2 punch. Okay? The same thing with Formula 99. Kick any carpets behind, as my brother Keith used to say. God bless his soul. He would always say that, you know. So here you've got a liquid, you've got a powder, and they can make a difference. But remember this, when you switch those hoses over to the other, all right, you want to bleed that line a little bit, because you probably still have a good, I don't know, if you're running 150 foot of hose, I don't know how much water you can have in there, but at least maybe a half a gallon or a gallon or something like that. So maybe bleed it through for a little bit, and then start in your cleanest room and you work your way back, and that'll help you a lot right there. Okay, so that kind of leads, so that covers it. So there's a reason it can fail, because of your improper choice of rinse. Here's another thing too. When an acid rinse hits the carpet, as soon as it hits the carpet interface, what does it do? It immediately drops your pH. So if you're cleaning with an alkaline pre-spray and you're rinsing with the acidic rinse on a really nasty polyester carpet, what happens? Your cleaning stops immediately. You have no more cleaning after that. So what good is that? So that's why you like to move it over to an alkaline rinse. It gives you that 1-2 punch, and you can cut through those traffic patterns, no problem. And generally you can do that without even having to boost your pre-spray. But I like to boost it, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so what is your pre-spray applicator? Is it a hydroforce? Is it an electric sprayer? Is it a pump-up sprayer? Hydroforces are great. I love hydroforces. I love inline sprayers. But if your temperature at your machine is too high, and you're pre-spraying at, you know, what is it, 180, your tank will start to cavitate. And when that tank starts to cavitate, what happens? Then it's not pulling up the proper amount of pre-spray if it's pulling up anything at all. So you're spraying basically water on the carpet, and you can't figure out why it's not suspending the soil. It's because you weren't paying attention. So generally, we'll pre-spray at maybe just a little bit over idle. Not much over idle to keep the temperature down, or you can go cut the temperature down. And that's really critical when you get downstairs. Very clean the upstairs. You get downstairs, you've been running the machine for a while, it heats up. So you might want to let it cool down just a little bit, get your temperature down a little bit, then go in there and pre-spray, so you're not going too high, and you're pulling the proper amount of pre-spray up in there, and then that'll help you quite a bit. All right, what about your pre-spray ratios? Are you following on the back? You know, we have our mix guide, which you can pick up, and it's also written on the back. We even got pictures. We're the first ones to come out with pictures of how to mix it up. So you've got, whether you're using a pump up, whether you're using a 4-to-1 or an 8-to-1 container, make sure you get those correct. All right? If you want to add a little more, it doesn't hurt, but I'd rather just boost instead of doing that. What about your rinse ratio? You know, you have a GPH on there, right? So make sure your GPH, you can always cut your GPH up just a little bit on the nastier carpets. So if I'm cleaning at, I think we run this like 2 GPH, yeah, 2 to 3 GPH, there's nothing wrong with going in there and cutting it up to 4 pH if I know it's a really dirty soil. So you're like a detective. You've gone in there, figure out how dirty it is. Maybe upstairs you can kind of keep the GPH a little bit lower. Then when you get downstairs, cut the GPH some up. Cut through that stuff, man. You're trying to get in and get out in a reasonable amount of time by doing a great job. That's really important. Sit on the other side of the logo, bro. I mean, it's all right. This is my first one doing this, Dave. Most people know what Unchained is, but that's a good point. I could move over. Yeah, I'll move over a little bit. My son set this up for me. Most people kind of know what Unchained is. All right. Shameless plugs, right? All right. Now let's talk about the type of pre-agitation. What are you using to pre-agitate the carpets with? You know, the heavier the soil, the heavier the agitation is my motto. If it's, I appreciate that, Dave. Hey, you took my terminology there. If you got very light soil, you can use a rake. I'm not a fan of it, but you can. When you get downstairs, especially upstairs, you can generally use a rake in most homes. But then you get downstairs, you want to use your CRB, right? Or you want to use a 175. You really want to cut through that. Take your time and really do a good job of using your proper agitation, because agitation helps suspend that soil, and it also helps disperse the pre-spray. You know, a lot of times, thanks Dave, appreciate that. A lot of times customers will say, after I've gone through that whole process we've talked about so far, I've already pre-sprayed the carpet, pre-agitated it, I mixed up everything correctly. I've had many customers walk in and say, wow, you did a great job. I haven't even rinsed the carpets yet. But they said the carpets look great, and they smell great, because they use my products, of course. That's really important. All right, so here's another factor. Upstairs, where it's not that soiled, you don't need as much dwell time. But you get downstairs, you want to give it some extra dwell time. Allow it to work its way into that oxidized oil that's inside of the fiber. If you give it a little extra time, but you don't want to give it so much time that it dries. So if you start to feel it getting just a little bit too dry, I say 10 minutes upstairs, 15, 20 minutes downstairs. And you can pre-spray ahead of yourself, so when you get over to the dirtier spots, it's already had that extra dwell time. Nothing wrong with spraying down another layer, a light layer of pre-spray, or taking your wand and misting the carpet down lightly, right? Why? What does that do? That'll re-wet your pre-spray. But suppose you're running acid rinse on a filthy carpet and you hit it with your wand. What'd you do? Just drop the pH. So you're working against it. So it's not your pre-spray that failed. It's your knowledge or your lack of knowledge that's causing the problem for the carpets not to come clean. And it's really important you as the true professional, consummate professional, to be able to analyze the carpets, figure out a plan of action, and then implement it and get the proper professional results. And customers know that. You know, they really do know the difference, right? Okay, now let's talk about soil type. What if it's just a house with a lot of urine in the carpet? Well, then, you know, you might want to, along with the Unchained right here, you can just add a little bit Unchained into your pre-spray, and that'll take care of those organic soils. So if you know it's organic soils all throughout, you can boost it on the organic side. You can use something like Pure O2, right? Okay. Or you can add a scoop of that into it. And then, but what if it's on the oily side? What if they've got some dogs? What if it's a lot of tar and stuff like that and you're by interstate? Who knows? But you can generally tell, or if a lot of cooking oils, you know, maybe some curry, who knows? But anyway, for the most part, if you know it's a lot of oils, then I like to use something like a Citrusol, add a little bit of Citrusol to my pre-spray, and I could add a little bit of Pure O2. So you can add just a little bit of both of those to your pre-spray, gives it that boost, helps break that oxidation right there. Urine stains on wool, I'll talk about that another time. That's a little intensive right there, but I'll definitely talk about that for another time. Okay, so you determine your soil type. Now you can go ahead and adjust your pre-spray or your booster accordingly. That's really important. So that'll help you determine whether your pre-spray is failing or whether the carpet's failed because they've been scratched up, because they've been neglected. And you want to know if it's soil on the carpet, or you want to know if it's wear and tear. All right. All right, so what are you using to extract with? Are you using a rotary extractor? Are you using a wand? Do you have a glide? Are you taking the time to do the proper amount of clean strokes, proper amount of dry strokes? If you get, you know, and that kind of leads me to my second thing. So make sure you're doing a lot of good. If you have a rotary on the truck, nothing wrong with bringing that rotary in and hitting just those traffic patterns. I keep it on my truck, and I don't clean the whole home with a rotary extractor, okay? But what I will do is do those transition areas. I'll do a den, I'll do a hall, and then I follow up with my wand, okay? That way I know I'm getting the deepest clean possible. That's really important. Kind of leads me into my next point, and that was, did you attempt a second clean? What do I mean by that? You've done clean, you say, oh man, those traffic patterns just didn't come out the way I wanted them to be. I really think my pre-spray failed. No. If you go to wash your hands, you get a bunch of oil on your hands, right? And you've been working on your vehicle, and you got oil on your hands. And you wash your hands, right? And they're really oily. And next thing you know, there's still some oil left. Not a lot. They look fairly clean, but there's still some oil left. What do? Just say, man, that, that detergent I used on my hands just failed. All right, I'm out of here. No. Common sense tells you what? Reapply it, re-agitate it, and re-rinse it, right? So the same thing with your carpets. Do the same thing. Nothing wrong with a traffic pattern, taking the time, pre-spraying that traffic pattern, re-agitating it, and re-rinsing it. And generally, most of the time, that'll take care of your problem. I've even many times in those situations when I've got maybe 1 or 2 or 3 transitions or like that didn't come clean, I'll just take my Pure O2, put it in a 1-gallon sprayer, and mix it up, spray it right on those traffic patterns, re-agitate it, re-rinse it, and boom. Excuse me, it looks like brand new after that. So something to keep in mind. Move this over here just a little bit. All right, let's talk about what about the volume of pre-spray? Are you putting enough down on the fibers? Some guys will take, and I've seen them just kind of go like this. Boom, 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 boom. Just going back and forth real fast. Well, rather, you kind of think about painting. Take your time and overlap your strokes where it's really soiled. It's not always a matter of what you put down as long as you take it out. Okay? But you don't want to overwet it so much that it runs down the fiber, especially on polyesters, gets into the backing, and you got a bunch of wicking problems. But as long as you extract it, give it plenty to do the job with in the areas you need to. Lighter in the clean areas, in the lighter soiled areas, heavier in the heavy soiled areas. It's that simple. Okay? And I noticed here Kevin O'Hoole. How you doing, Kevin? Kevin came on there and said that polys love heat. That's true. That's because oils break down with heat. So if you can, crank up your truck mount. I don't know how you crank up your portable, Kevin. I guess you just get the hottest water you can out of the sink, right? Nothing wrong with that because portables are still great units. I find portables can clean just as good as a truck mount. It just takes a little bit longer. That's all. If you're willing to put that time and energy and effort into it, and you can be very successful just like Kevin is, though Kevin spends a lot of time in high-end, high-rises and stuff like that. You don't have a choice but to use a portable, and it's the best choice in that situation. Okay, another thing you can do too is, suppose you went ahead and just did what I said. You cleaned it, you've done everything we mentioned here so far, and then you recleaned it, and it still doesn't look as good. Well, there's one more thing you can do to it. You can post-bonnet it. Take a nice cotton bonnet, go over top of that and look at it and see if anything transferred. If it transferred, you either didn't go through the process correctly or something broke down along the ways, and you need to figure out what broke down. Okay? That's really important. One way you can tell too if your hydroforce is working correctly, I find a 4-to-1 hydroforce, right? A 4-to-1 hydroforce, generally in 5 areas, you'll use up the whole thing. All right? So if it's not going down, and you just did 5 areas and only went halfway down or a quarter way down, you need to see my video on inline sprayers and make sure they're working correctly and go ahead and adjust it because it might be miscalibrated. So take the time and calibrate it. One person asked here, is my portable, it's only 100 PSI, is that enough for commercial cleaning? Look, Ariel, I could clean with a rug doctor if I have to. Do I want to? No, but I can. It's just going to slow you down. So it'll clean practically anything, but it's going to take more time, more energy, more effort, and you're also going to have to think about the TAC, T-A-C-T, and make it up somewhere else. If you don't have that strong a machine, that strong a temperature, that strong a PSI, then you're going to have to move over to more agitation. You're going to have to move over to more dwell time and better chemistry. So we got you covered for that. So yes, you can do anything. What about anything? It's just not as efficient. You want to be as efficient as possible. So remember about the pre-spray. Make sure you're going through the proper amount of pre-spray, okay? A 8-to-1 pre-spray hydroforce is going to last you like 2 homes or 10 areas. And a 4-to-1 is going to last you 4 areas. Okay, I'm sorry, 5 areas, okay? Generally. Depending on how soiled the carpet is. If you don't put much upstairs, you can go, that's a little bit of a variable, but at least it gives you some type of template to be able to work with, okay? Ariel, Kevin's got a good point there. Make sure you read that, okay? All right, let's see. Is your last step injection on? I know some guys who have actually left it off outside, didn't realize they didn't have their alkaline rinse popping through there. They weren't getting that 1-2 punch. So their pre-spray wasn't failing. They just failed to cut it on. All right? Or maybe it's not working properly. I just did a video on that. Make sure that your chemical injection or your feed system is working, or your rinse system is working properly. You can check that out on YouTube. It's over there. Another thing too is, did you pre-vacuum? And did you pre-vacuum well, especially in those transition areas. And why is that? Because maybe your pre-spray was used up on the soil that's sitting on top of the fiber when you're trying to get to the soil that's oxidized or that's stuck to the fiber. So if you've got a fiber like this and you got a bunch of soil all around it, you created some mud, that's hard enough to get out. So you're overworking the machine, overworking you, but it might be in the way. So here you're sitting here and you're pre-spraying that soil that's on the outside, you're not doing anything for the fiber. So the fiber doesn't change the color. So make sure that you take the time and really, really pre-vacuum well. Make sure you use nice even coverage and stuff like that. Now let's talk about another problem, especially of technicians. And this is not a slide on technicians. Let me take a sip of this first. But I want to talk about technicians for a second. I noticed when I was traveling the country in my Clean Across America tour, which I'm going back out on in about another couple weeks. I'll be working my way across the country again. And I picked up a little bit nicer, larger RV so I can carry more samples and I can carry more things to demonstrate with. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, but let's talk about technicians for a second. You know, if a technician's in a hurry or if he's sloppy and he just doesn't take his time, or he's apathetic, he just doesn't care about what he's doing, well then you think the pre-spray failed, but in actuality he was in a hurry. Maybe I get to the next job and you have enough time. He didn't do enough clean strokes. He didn't do enough dry strokes. He didn't do enough of agitation. He didn't mix the pre-sprays correctly. He didn't boost. He didn't bother to switch over to an alkaline rinse. All those factors right in there can make a huge difference. So even if all that information and all that knowledge is useless if the technician doesn't apply it. You got to apply the knowledge to be able to, there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom, okay? Knowledge is just you know something. What is wisdom? Wisdom is knowledge applied. And a wise cleaner knows that if he takes the time and does all the things correctly, he's going to get the big 3 R's, right? Repeats, reviews, and referrals. And that's what you want. You're trying to build a lifetime customer. So keep that in mind. Now, another thing it could be maybe you're not maintaining your machine properly. Maybe, like I mentioned about the portable, could be too much foam. Or on a truck mount, maybe your belts are loose. So when you're getting down there, you're not getting as much lift. Make sure your lift, your CFMs, your PSI, your heat, your filters, especially your filters. Make sure your filters are clean. Because a lot of times, your filters don't affect your CFMs as much. Oh, I feel like I can go vacuum. But what it does kill is it kills your lift. And lift's kind of what lifts it up out of the carpet, and your CFM is what takes it back to the machine. So make sure you get that correct. So make sure your technicians is caring. Make sure your equipment is working properly. Another thing too is what about the, well, I guess you could think about environment a little bit. You know, some homes you notice they're very humid because they don't have the air conditioners on in the middle of summer. So that could affect the technician. But it could also affect the dry time. So the carpets might look good, but they might wick back up on you. So your pre-spray didn't actually fail. It's just you weren't able to get the carpets dry properly. So you can either hook up something from your truck or do a bunch of extra dry strokes. Get them carpets as dry as possible and somehow try to get some movement of air across it, okay? Then of course, you know, we talked about the chemistry. We broke that down pretty good. Or we talked about, here's another thing too is, what if the client has used some products in a traffic pattern already that might react with your pre-spray incorrectly? That could have some effect on it too. So do a little bit of detective work, a little bit of investigation. Ask the client what they've used on the carpet. Try to figure that out, especially in traffic patterns. One would love to take a thing of glory and spread across some traffic patterns, right? So that might be affecting with what you're working with. And it might take a couple of applications or a couple of extractions, should I say, to really get that out of there. So there's nothing wrong with cleaning it. But look, charge appropriately. Take the time. Learn this stuff, and then you can charge accordingly because you can explain to them, well, Mrs. Jones, the last cleaner left a lot of residue in the carpet, or you left some residue in the carpet, and I'm going to fix that, but it's going to take me some extra work. All right, a little bit of electrochemistry, a little bit more labor, a little more agitation, but I'm going to get it just right for you, and we're going to keep it that way from here on out. Okay, great. Glad to hear that. Okay, so let's kind of do just a little review, and then I'm going to end this live video. Or if anybody has any questions, I'm trying to keep it under 30 minutes. I know it's the middle of a work day, But Trey is setting up this for me, and we're kind of getting a feel for it, and hopefully I can do this more often. All right, so when your pre-spray fails, what's going to be your first train of thought? Okay? Think about your rinse. All right? Think about your equipment, your truck mount or your portable. Think about your volume of pre-spray you're putting down. Make sure you're boosting correctly. Make sure you know the fiber ID correctly. All those things factor in. And it's not that hard. You just need to know it. And so, is your dwell time proper? Are you taking the time doing a good job? Did you pre-vacuum? Did you apply the pre-spray evenly and maybe a little heavier in the traffic patterns? Did you take the time and wash it twice? Once, twice, maybe even 3 times. Did you do a micro test? Did you test the fiber to see if it's nylon or polyester, olefin or propylene? Those factors all make a huge difference. So if you just take the time and investigate, do the detective work ahead of time, your pre-spray is not going to fail. Okay, it's going to clean, and you're going to look like a hero to the client, and that's what's important. So, just last but not least, if you're going with a pre-spray, like Black Label, or you want something a little stronger, maybe some Blue Label or something like that, or some Red Label, because they have a little bit more oil cutting ability on the other ones, or you want to boost it, you can add a little bit of Pure O2 to it for the organic soils, and sometimes the oils too, doesn't hurt. And you can add yourself a little bit of Citrusolve in there too. All right, so if you kind of put that together there, that'll help in those really thrashed, frog nasty carpets, right? And then of course, you want to make sure your rinse is proper. So you can use a little bit of an alkaline rinse in a powder form, or you can use it in a liquid form. Or that'll give you a little more strength. One more thing too I didn't mention too, some guys would just take and add a little bit of Grout Master, spray it right on the traffic pattern on those dirty areas with a gallon sprayer. Or they'll take some Frog Nasty, right? Put it in a gallon sprayer, mix it up after they clean it the first time, spray that traffic pattern and boom, or you can mix in your pre-spray. So you have all these variables, but it's up to you to decide which variable is going to work best for you. And I'll guarantee you, pre-spray never fails. It's something else that failed in the cleaning process. And it's up to you to determine what that is when the situation arises. I can't tell you how many cleaners I ran into where their hydroforce wasn't working correctly, or they had the temperature up too high on the hydroforce, or they didn't boost, or they didn't do so many things we mentioned in here. Every time it seems to be it's a failure of the cleaner to have the proper amount of knowledge, or to apply that knowledge wisely so they can get the carpets as clean as possible and make the customer as happy as possible. Because at the end of the day, what does the client want? The client wants a clean carpet. She wants a clean, respectable person to come in and do the job. Get on down the road till the next time you come back. That's all they want. They want a great experience. The same thing you want. So you should be thinking in your head, what would I want if the professional came to my home? I would want his truck to be clean. I would want him to be clean and uniformed. I would like him to smell decent, I would like my cleaners to smell clean, and I would like to use, safer chemistry. People love that kind of stuff. I would like that. I'd like somebody to come in with safer chemistry. I'd like them to take the time to do a good job. I don't want to be able to take a spot remover, go back behind them and hit a spot, and next thing you know, I got it cleaner than they did. Yeah, and they're the professional. That's one more thing too. I don't have up here is a bottle of Rave, but our new Rave spotters, a lot of feedback I'm getting, guys are taking, when those transitions are left over, they're misting it down on it, doing a little bit of TMF Nike shuffle, kind of rubbing it with their feet a little bit, and they're rinsing. They're seeing those little transition areas that come and clean really fast. So I thought that was pretty cool. Edge to edge carpet cleaner. Okay, so now we're going to take a couple of questions here, or points. Thanks, Travis. I appreciate that a lot. And Ariel, make sure you pay attention to what Kevin said there. It's an easy upgrade, he said, to go to 220 PSI, and that'll help you quite a bit. Edge to edge cleaning says, agitation is very important, best with a CRB. I wouldn't say a CRB is best, but for all around, you can't beat the CRB. But a 175 buffer will out agitate a CRB. But there's a problem with that. It's super heavy. Okay, but if you get a really, really really thrash traffic pattern, you can come up with a red pad, hit it with a 175. The problem is you can hurt the carpet with a 175 if you're not careful. If you sit in one area too long, you can burn the carpet. But boy, can it out agitate just about anything. But the safest and most effective way is definitely a CRB. So that's a good point, Ed's Dads. I don't know who you are. Feel free to say your name there. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video of why PreSpray fails. Guess what? PreSpray doesn't fail. Generally, you or your machine fails. All right? So as long as you know that generally you can take care of that traffic pattern, or the fibers failed. And you'll know that after you have implemented the things that I've said there. Because let's face it, carpets, polyesters especially, they mat down very fast. Those oils hold on the sand and grit. If you had sand at the bottom of your fingers, you did that, what would happen? You start cutting your fingers up. So then it's not reflecting light properly anymore. So your PreSpray didn't fail. Either you failed, your machine failed, or the fiber failed. So as long as you can keep that in mind right there, that simplifies everything. You can analyze and say, okay, where did I go wrong? Why didn't this come clean? When I'm still getting some off with a little bit of a swipe test. I call it a swipe test. Take a little bit of product in its concentrated form, put it on a terry cloth towel, wear gloves of course. Do a little micro test, see how it comes out. If it's coming clean, you know somewhere in your process, somewhere in your equipment, somewhere in your knowledge, somewhere in your application, you failed. The PreSpray didn't fail. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Rob Allen, Truck Mount Forums. Have yourself a great day.